Could a 15-kilogram feathered pack predator from the late Cretaceous survive the forbidden lands of monster hunter wilds? A world where the top of the food chain has wings? That is the question I want to answer today, and I want to answer it honestly, because the setup sounds like a slam dunk and it absolutely is not. On Earth, pack hunting works because the prey lives on the ground too. Surround it, flank it, wear it down. But here, the apex predators fly. And the moment your rival can climb into a third dimension you cannot reach, every trick your pack ever learned starts to fall apart. Let me kill one image right away because you are picturing the wrong animal. The real Velociraptor mongoliensis was about 2 meters long, nose to tail, and most of that was tail. It stood roughly half a meter at the hip, weighed 15 to 20 kilograms, about the size of a large turkey, and was covered in feathers. Not the 2-meter-tall, scaly monster from the movies. A knee-high, plumed, fast little killer with one serious weapon, a 6.5-centimeter sickle-claw on each second toe. That is the contender. Now let us see how far it gets. And I want you to hold on to that size difference because it changes everything about this analysis. When most people imagine a raptor taking on a monster, they are imagining a 200-kilogram apex hunter. What we are actually dropping into the Forbidden Lands weighs less than a medium dog. That is the honest starting line. A small, clever, cold-blooded, fast predator walking into a world built to test titans. The gap between what people expect and what the fossils show is the whole reason this matchup is so much more interesting than it looks. This is Survival Decoded, the series where I test fictional and prehistoric creatures against the harshest worlds in gaming and nature, and Velociraptor is one of the most misunderstood animals I have ever put through this process. So before we drop it into the Forbidden Lands, we need to agree on what it actually was. Velociraptor mongoliensis lived about 75 to 71 million years ago in the Judopta Formation of what is now Mongolia. It was a dromaeosaurid, a small, agile bird-like predator. We know it was feathered because in 2007, researchers found quill knobs on a fossil forearm. Those bumps are exactly where large feathers anchor in modern birds, so this animal had real, pugnacious feathers on its arms. It couldn't fly, but it was wearing the same gear birds use today. So how did it hunt? Not by crushing bone. The bite force was modest, probably tens to a few hundred newtons, nowhere near enough to shatter anything. The real kill method was something paleontologists call raptor prey restraint, or RPR. The raptor leaps onto prey about its own size, sinks those sickle claws in like grappling hooks, and pins the victim down with its full body weight while it feeds. It just hangs on and lets gravity and blood loss do the work. Picture a hawk mantling a struggling rabbit, not a lion crushing a buffalo's windpipe. That's the toolkit we're bringing into this world, precision grappling, not raw power. And that sickle claw deserves a closer look, because it's not the slashing sword the movies made it out to be. Studies of the claw's shape and toe movement show it wasn't designed to disembowel with one swipe. It's a hook and a spike, a gripping tool. It punches into hide and finds purchase, keeping the raptor attached while prey thrashes. The raptor was a grappler, using its body weight, foot claws, and feathered arms for balance, riding a struggling animal down to exhaustion. The whole system is optimized for prey it can physically overpower with mass and grip. Keep that in mind, because in a world full of multi-ton monsters, the size of the thing you can actually pin is the single most important number the raptor brings to the table. We're going to score it on 4 categories, each out of 10. First, habitat adaptability. Can its body handle the terrain and climate? Then dietary compatibility. Can it find enough of the right food? Next, competition and predation. Can it hold its own against the locals and, more urgently, avoid becoming someone's lunch? And finally, reproductive success. Because one survivor means nothing if the population can't sustain itself. Average those 4 scores, and the final number decides if this animal truly belongs here. And the Forbidden Lands throttle every one of those categories because of one thing, the weather. Monster Hunter Wilds runs a cycle called inclemency, and it swings the entire ecosystem through 3 extremes: fallow, scarcity, drought, choking sandstorms. Then inclemency itself, violent storms and lightning. And plenty, a sudden explosion of life and abundance. The land can flip from a starving desert to an electrical war zone to a lush buffet in just hours. Nothing on Earth changes that fast. And make sure you stick around until the end, because after that, we will explore 3 ways these raptors might evolve over millions of years to actually earn a place in this world. One social, one hidden, and one that tries to take back the sky. Let's start with the ground under their feet. Start with climate, because here the raptor gets its one genuine home field advantage. The real Velociraptor evolved in a semi-arid desert. The Jurassic Formation is all dunes, dry riverbeds, and animals buried by sandstorms, including the famous specimens. This animal was built for heat, sand, and not much water. So when it shows up in the windward plains, the dry, wind-scoured grassland that's the starting region of wilds, its body is already tuned pretty close to right. Dry air, open sightlines, hard ground for running. For a cursorial predator, meaning one built to chase on foot, that's a comfortable match. The feathers help more than you'd think. A coat of insulating plumage is excellent thermal regulation for a desert that bakes by day and freezes at night. Those feathers that let its cousins fly? For this animal, they're a blanket. So, through a normal desert day-night swing, the raptor is fine. Its ancestors survived exactly this, the brutal temperature swings of a Cretaceous desert night, and the fossil record shows they did it well enough to become one of the dominant small predators of their formation. Then, there's the water question. Again, desert heritage pays off. Arid-adapted animals are efficient with water, extracting moisture from their prey and minimizing what they lose. A predator that evolved where standing water was rare won't be caught out by the dry stretches of the windward plains the way a rainforest animal would. So for baseline dry plains conditions, the raptor's physiology isn't just adequate, it's genuinely pre-adapted. That's the good news, and I want to give it full credit before the bad news arrives. But the inclemency cycle is not a normal swing, and this is where the body plan starts to strain. Going from fallow drought to a lightning storm in a few hours is a thermal and physiological shock nothing on Earth is adapted to. And a hard physics problem waits the moment the raptor leaves the plains. Small bodies lose heat fast. Heat loss scales with surface area, heat generation scales with mass, and a 15-kilogram animal has a lot of surface area for very little mass. That's fine in the desert. It's a death sentence in the ice shard cliffs, the frozen biome of wilds. A turkey-sized animal in sub-zero wind, even a feathered one, is burning fuel it cannot replace. The same small size that makes it nimble on the plains makes it a candle in the cold. This body wants one climate, and this world refuses to hold still. Terrain is the other half of the habitat question, and the Forbidden Lands give you a spectrum that slides from ideal to outright hostile. The windward plains, once again, are nearly perfect, firm, open ground where a lightweight biped can really open up and lean on that long tail for counterbalance through tight turns. That tail worked like a dynamic stabilizer, stiffened by bony rods along the vertebrae so the animal could cut hard at speed without wiping out. On flat ground, this thing is a sprinting machine. Now look at the rest of the map. The scarlet forest is dense, wet, vertical, tangled with roots and undergrowth. A sprinter loses its main trick the second it can't sprint, and thick forest completely neutralizes an open ground chaser. The oil well basin is worse, a hot, tar-choked lowland venting toxic gas. No desert-adapted respiratory system is going to thrive breathing petroleum vapor. And the ice shard cliffs pile steep, slick footing on top of the cold problem we already discussed. A lightweight cursor can't grip that. This animal is a specialist, and Wilds keeps asking it to be a generalist. 1 biome out of 4, it's excellent. The other 3, it's adrift. The inclemency cycle shoves it between them before it can settle anywhere. Fit for the plains, lost everywhere else, scoring them a habitat adaptability rating of 5 out of 10. So what does a 15-kilogram raptor actually eat here? The best clue is what it ate back home. The 1971 fighting dinosaurs fossil, one of the most famous specimens in paleontology, shows a Velociraptor locked in combat with a Protoceratops, a pig-sized herbivore, both buried mid-fight. That fossil tells us the raptor's natural prey was animals in its own weight class, small to medium, not giants. RPR only works if you can physically pin the target. Try pinning a 100-kilo animal and it drags you off. Try something that weighs a ton and you're just along for the ride, not a predator. And that's the core problem in the Forbidden Lands. Most of the notable fauna is enormous, monsters weighing hundreds of kilograms up to several tons, all far beyond what raptor prey restraint can handle. Our contender simply can't bring those down. What it can do is work the edges, small herbivores, the equivalents of that Protoceratops niche, juvenile monsters, the young of larger species before they bulk up, and crucially, scavenging, feeding on the carcasses flying wyverns leave behind after taking down something huge. A pack of small predators cleaning a kill they didn't make is a perfectly viable strategy. Coyotes and jackals do exactly this. There's also a metabolic angle. A 15-kilogram active predator doesn't need to eat a monster to stay alive. Its absolute food requirement is tiny compared to the giants of this world, so small prey and scraps can genuinely sustain it. A hawk-sized energy budget is easier to fill than a lion-sized one. That's the quiet advantage of being little. While a multi-ton apex predator has to land enormous kills constantly just to keep its engine running, our raptor can get by on a steady trickle of rodent-sized prey and leftovers. In an ecosystem full of oversized carcasses, a small, efficient scavenger hunter is actually well positioned, right up until the food itself vanishes. It's worth being concrete about how far scavenging can carry a small predator, because the numbers surprised me. On the Serengeti, spotted hyenas pull a large share of their food from carcasses they never killed, and a striped hyena can live almost entirely on other hunters' leftovers. Our raptor needs maybe a few hundred grams of meat a day to keep going. So a single wyvern kill, hundreds of kilograms of monster left cooling on the plain, isn't one meal for the pack. It's days of food for a whole family. The raptor doesn't have to win the hunt. It just has to reach the leftovers before the next scavenger does, and being small, fast, and coordinated is exactly the build for that job. In a world where the giants keep dropping oversized corpses, a nimble little cleanup crew is quietly one of the better fed things on the map. And the inclemency cycle cuts both ways here. During plenty, when the land floods with life, a small opportunistic predator eating little animals, juveniles, eggs, and carrion has more than enough protein to thrive. But when fallow arrives and sandstorms roll in, the small prey vanishes into burrows, and that same generalist diet becomes a starvation diet. The raptor doesn't starve because it's picky. It starves because the pantry itself disappears on a schedule it can't predict. Unlike the native fauna, it has no evolutionary memory of when fallow arrives, no instinct to fatten up or cache food before the lean season hits. It walks into every drought unprepared, enough food to live in the good times, real hunger in the lean ones, scoring them a dietary compatibility rating of 6 out of 10. Alright, let's get to the core of this video, and I have to be honest with you about the biggest assumption we're making. The whole premise, raptors as a coordinated pack, is scientifically contested. The truth is, the evidence that Velociraptor actually hunted in coordinated packs is pretty thin. That famous fighting dinosaurs fossil? It's a one-on-one duel, one raptor against a single Protoceratops. The coordinated pack image we all picture comes mostly from Deinonychus, a larger relative, where multiple individuals were found around a single prey animal, and even that interpretation is hotly disputed. Some researchers argue those were less like wolves executing a plan, and more like Komodo dragons mobbing a carcass. So here's the fair approach. We're going to test the best case scenario. Let's assume these raptors are genuinely coordinated, that they hunt like wolves with real teamwork. Give the contender every benefit of the doubt. But that assumption isn't completely pulled out of the sky. There's some fossil support. A set of dromaeosaur trackways from China, described in a 2007 study, preserved 6 similarly sized individuals walking in parallel along the same shoreline at the same time. That's about as close to direct evidence of gregarious behavior as fossils get. It doesn't prove a wolf-style ambush, but it shows these animals at least tolerated each other and traveled together, and travel is the first ingredient of coordination. Add in the bigger relatives, Deinonychus at around 70 kilograms and Utahraptor at several hundred, and you have a family that kept experimenting with larger body size and, possibly, group living. So when I grant the pack assumption, I'm not inventing it from nothing. I'm taking the most generous, reasonable reading of a genuinely mixed evidence base, just so we test the raptor at its strongest, not its weakest. Under that assumption, against ground-based prey, the pack is formidable. Coordinated dromaeosaurs could encircle a target, split its attention, and drive it while flankers dart in to open wounds with those sickle-claws. Speed, numbers, and RPR combine into something genuinely dangerous to any animal in the right size range. 4 or 5 raptors working a single medium herbivore? That's a problem the herbivore may not survive. On a flat, open plain, against an enemy that also lives on that plain, I would back the pack. The trouble is, the most dangerous thing in this world doesn't stay on the plain. Here's the wall the raptor cannot climb. The apex predator of the windward plains is Ray Dow, an electric flying wyvern, and the word that matters there is flying. Every advantage the pack has just evaporated, and I want to walk through exactly why, mechanically, because I'm not being dramatic here. This is geometry. Pack coordination is a two-dimensional weapon. Encirclement, flanking, cutting off escape, all of it depends on the prey being confined to the same plane as the hunters. You surround something by occupying the ground around it. But an aerial predator turns the fight three-dimensional, and there is no such thing as surrounding a point in the air with animals stuck on the ground. Ray Dow does not have to engage the pack on its terms. It picks a target, dives, strikes, and climbs back out of reach before the flankers can converge. The raptors can look up, they cannot follow. There is no encirclement of something that simply leaves the board whenever it chooses. And Ray Dow does not fight fair even by wyvern standards, because it channels electricity, discharging it through the ground and the air around it. A pack's greatest vulnerability is clustering, and clustering is the entire point of pack tactics. An area effect electrical attack against a tight group of small, closely spaced animals is close to the worst matchup a coordinated hunter can face. The very formation that makes them lethal to ground prey makes them a single easy target from above. One discharge into a huddled pack does not injure one raptor, it injures all of them at once. Everything that made the group strong becomes the reason the group dies together. There is a deeper problem hiding underneath the tactics, and it is about who is prey to whom. Back in the Cretaceous, the raptor was a mid-tier predator. It hunted animals its own size, and it, in turn, was hunted by the larger theropods of its world. It knows how to be prey to ground predators. What it has never faced is predation from directly overhead by something that strikes and leaves. Ground animals evolve escape responses tuned to threats that approach across the ground, freezing, bolting, dodging laterally. None of those work against a vertical strike from an attacker that was a speck in the sky a second earlier. The raptor's entire threat detection system is pointed at the wrong dimension. The animal isn't just outgunned, it is watching the wrong horizon. The mechanism is simple once you see it. Coordinated ground assault, the raptor's whole game, needs a flat, two-dimensional battlefield, and the apex threat here attacks from a third dimension with a weapon built to punish exactly the clustering that pack tactics require. The pack doesn't lose this fight narrowly, it never gets to fight it at all. Outmatched in the one arena that decides everything, scoring them a competition and predation rating of 3 out of 10. A single animal surviving is one thing. For a population to survive, it comes down to reproduction. Velociraptor laid eggs, and we have good fossil evidence for how dromaeosaurs and their kin handled parenting. In related oviraptorosaurs, adults were preserved directly on top of their clutches in a brooding posture, arms spread over the nest exactly like a modern bird incubating. So their reproductive strategy sat between the two classic extremes, not dumping hundreds of abandoned eggs like a sea turtle, and not pouring everything into a single heavily invested infant like an elephant. Just a modest clutch, a ground nest, and active care of that nest. We can even bracket the numbers. Based on related species, dromaeosaur clutches were modest, probably somewhere around half a dozen to a dozen eggs, with an incubation period of weeks. You cannot simply abandon that nest without throwing away the entire investment. That is a slow, high-stakes reproductive cadence. In a stable environment where a parent can reasonably expect the nest to survive a month, it works beautifully. In a place where a month is long enough for the entire climate to flip twice, it is a catastrophic bet. That strategy falls apart in the Forbidden Lands. 2 reasons, both from the same root. A ground nest is exposed. In an environment crawling with large predators and roaming monsters, a clutch of eggs and a brooding parent pinned to the spot is a soft, stationary target for weeks. Every hour on the nest is risk the parent cannot avoid. Worse, the inclemency cycle scrambles the timing. An inclemency storm can flatten a nest outright. A fallow drought arriving while the hatchlings are small and helpless means they starve before they can hunt. On real Earth, native animals synchronize their breeding to the seasons, timing births to the window when food is most reliable. The local monsters of wilds have presumably tuned their cycles to inclemency over evolutionary time. Our raptor has not. It would be breeding blind, dropping vulnerable young into a calendar it cannot read. A defensible strategy on stable ground, gutted by an unstable world, scoring them a reproductive success rating of 4 out of 10. Alright, let's tally the scores. Habitat 5, Dietary 6, Competition and Predation 3, Reproductive Success 4. That averages to 4.5 out of 10. Now, I want to be clear on this. That number isn't a simple pass or fail. Here's the honest verdict. An individual velociraptor or a small pack could survive short-term in the windward plains during a plenty phase. In the good season, on the right ground, eating small prey and scavenging wyvern kills, this animal gets by. It's genuinely well suited to that one narrow slice of this world. But the population doesn't make it. Long-term survival requires clearing every category, not just the easy one, and this animal runs into 2 walls it cannot climb. Sky full of flying wyverns that its pack tactics can never touch, and the inclemency cycle which starves its young and floods its nests on a schedule it never evolved to expect. So, honestly, it's a no. Not because the raptor is weak, it's a superb little predator, but because this specific world attacks the very things its strategy relies on, the ground and the calendar. It doesn't pass. And that's exactly the kind of answer this series is here to give you straight. Dropping a real animal into a fictional world isn't about cheering for it to win. It's about respecting what the animal actually was, running the biology honestly, and letting the numbers land where they land. Here, they land on a 15-kilogram desert specialist that shines in one biome in one season and gets ground down by everything else this world can throw at it. What if we gave the raptor time, millions of years of selection pressure inside the Forbidden Lands, to actually adapt? Selection doesn't care what an animal wants. It just favors whatever survives to breed. So let's follow 3 branches where the pressures of this world reshape the raptor into something that fits. 3 bets. The first is the social branch. The pressure is clear, coordination is the raptor's best tool, and a world this hostile would sharpen it ruthlessly. Over time, selection favors super packs with real division of labor. Dedicated sentries watching the sky, drivers and flankers, communicating through richer calls and brighter feather displays, the way wolves and jays already coordinate. A large enough, smart enough pack can dominate the ground niche completely and post lookouts to scatter before Raydow's dive bomb lands. I'll call this hypothetical Velociraptor Concultor, the pack that turned teamwork into a fortress. The second is my favorite. It stops fighting the sky entirely. If you can't win in the air, leave the air's line of sight. Selection pressure favors smaller body size, a shift to burrowing and nocturnal ambush. This raptor digs. It dens underground, where wyverns can't follow, and shelters its nests from predators and inclemency storms in the one place the weather can't reach. It hunts at night when the aerial hunters are grounded. It trades open ground glory for total avoidance of the thing that kills it. That's Velociraptor cunicularius, the burrower that solved the sky by refusing to be in it. The third is the boldest, the sky contender. It looks at those quill knobs, that arm feathering already present in the real animal, and pushes hard on it. Under relentless pressure from aerial attack, selection elongates the forelimbs, expands a membrane or feather surface into real gliding and leaping ability. The animal claws back the third dimension. It pounces upward, ambushes from cliffs, and attacks juvenile wyverns before they're strong enough to fly. It doesn't outfly Raydow. It just refuses to stay grounded, contesting the low air like flying squirrels and early birds once did. That's Velociraptor cheilophractus, the skybreaker. Each branch answers the same 2 walls, the sky and the cycle, in a completely different way, and I genuinely cannot tell you which one wins. So that's my verdict, and now I want yours. Which of those 3 evolutionary branches, the fortress pack, the burrower, or the skybreaker, do you think actually gives Velociraptor the best shot at surviving the Forbidden Lands long term? Let me know down in the comments, because this is exactly the kind of question I love arguing about with you. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss any future content. And if you want to further support the channel, consider becoming a YouTube member today. You'll get sneak peeks of upcoming videos, early access to new releases, and custom emojis of your favorite creatures from the channel. It genuinely helps me keep making these deep dives. Until next time, stay curious, and I'll see you all in the next video.